mean, what I was told, when these wildcat strikes occurred, and by a wildcat strike, I mean something that was not led by an organized union movement at that point. It was I mean, one of the lessons I learned from how this occurred at first was that perhaps misery is the best organizer. And at hops ranches, the salary, the wage that was paid at that point was like $1.50 an hour. And there was one practice that really antagonized the workers, and that was the bonus system, el bono. And basically was so the wages were actually $1.60 an hour, but 10 cents was withheld until the end of the season. They wanted to keep everybody there until the end of the season, and then they would pay this 10 cents that they had withheld. And this is a fairly common practice in agriculture, especially with crops that are on the per unit basis. You know, when it's not paid by the hour, but by the amount of pounds, for example, of asparagus you pick or whatever, because as these crops, as the orchards, for example, are depleted, you can't pick as many apples in a day as you can at the beginning or the middle of the season. And to be able to hold people on, they want to have an incentive for them to stay even when they can't make as much per hour when you've got the when you're not being paid by the hour, but by the number of pounds of asparagus or tree fruits or whatever. So the bonus system was prevalent in hops as well, even though it was paid by the hour, and that was a universal gripe. So when I was called about the strikes that were occurring, I think it was Lupe Gamboa explained to me that one of the real issues was the bonus system and trying to get that to end. So on the first day I got there, in the valley, I went out to a picket line, and this would have been in around September 15th of 1970. I went directly out to a picket line that had been set up by the workers, and there was a grower, I can't remember his name, who was very agitated. You know, it's in hops. Hops is a crop that can be very susceptible to a strike, because if the hops are not picked in a very precise time frame, the alpha resins, which are the key flavoring agent that goes into that comes out of the hop plant and goes into beer, if it's not picked within a 2 or 3 day period where these alpha resins are at their height, the crop will lose its value. So I don't think that was a strategy that was seized on by these workers. I think it was just that they were lucky in picking that particular crop, because there was a lot of economic pressure that you could put on the growers. So I got to this picket line. The atmosphere was very, very tense. There were workers lined up there. There was a sheriff who was there, and I can still remember his name was Deputy Berkelbein. And I had I had known about things that had happened in California, where the police forces had basically been totally on the side of the grower, and you know, there had been violence, and there was this long background of hostility towards the police by the workers. I mean, I had become somewhat familiar with that, and this deputy sheriff really surprised me. So he sees me there, figures out I'm a lawyer and that I'm involved with these workers somehow, and he basically comes and says, "Look, can you do something to get these guys back to work? I mean, can we draw up a little contract or something, you know, get these guys some more pay and let them go back to work, and so I can go back and be patrolling the highways rather than doing this." And so I was very surprised at this attitude, and he became sort of the go-between between the workers and the employer. And we drew up on a little yellow pad a handwritten contract where the pay was increased, the bonus system was done away with, everybody was rehired, and it was a very simple labor contract, and these guys went back to work. But psychologically, that gave a lot of these workers kind of a boost, because workers at about 15 other ranches were also on strike, and the word got around pretty fast that this one group of workers had in fact succeeded in their picket line to some extent. I mean, looking back at it, it wasn't much of a success. It was a psychological victory more than a substantive victory, because there was no union recognition or anything else. It was just between these particular workers and this particular grower. But that led to a coming together of all of the workers from the various hops ranches, and that was facilitated by some people from who were primarily University of Washington students. I think Lupe Gamboa was one of the most significant, and they began to put together an organization of all of these people that were from these various hops ranches, and that led up to a series of meetings that took place in Granger, Washington, in an old movie theater, and where the workers eventually decided that they wanted to become affiliated in some way with the United Farm Workers, which was, of course, well known in California at that point, but not really in many places outside of California.